and then Pete can join us as he is able.
Sounds good.
And it does not appear like I do not think Sam is going to be able to be here. She was not feeling well, and I think she's down for the count.
That's fine. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance and the Goethe Pledge. Please stand, place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Casey and Biggie.
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates community.
Als ein Bürger dieser Welt folge ich dem Kreis des Lernens, neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
And in Spanish, Nazmia?
Como ciudadano del mundo, seguiré el círculo del aprendizaje. Creatividad, ideas, respeto, colaboración, valor, empatía.
Thank you. Roll call, Frank.
Here.
Sam is not present. Pete, he hasn't joined us yet. Katrin?
Present.
I'm here. I would like to make a motion to affirm the board findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E. Is there a second?
I do. Second.
Frank, all in favor? Frank?
Aye.
Katrin?
Yes.
As a yes for me. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Yes, Frank.
On to the vote. Frank?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
That's yes for me. Casey, do you want to take us through public comment?
The public may comment on any item that is on the agenda or any other item that is in the board's jurisdiction. Members of the public who wish to comment during the board meeting may use the raise hand tool on the Zoom platform. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes limited to 3 minutes, and the total time for this purpose shall not exceed 30 minutes per meeting. If an interpreter is needed for comments, they will be translated to English, and the time limit shall be 6 minutes. Individuals may speak 1 time per subject. The Board of Trustees reserves the right to mute or remove a member of the public if comments or actions disrupt the board meeting. Board members are prohibited from responding to or commenting on matters raised by the public that are not on the agenda.
And there's no one for public comment?
No public comment at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular board meeting minutes of January 23rd, 2023. All in favor? Frank?
Aye.
Katrin?
Yes.
That's a yes for me as well. And we are now moving on to the ED report. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, well, moving right along, as we say. All right. So as usual, we start with enrollment, and I'm happy to report that our enrollment is growing. If you recall, we adjusted our enrollment projections down to 391 as we started the year at a lower amount. I think we dropped as low as 393. So we budgeted at 391, and the good news is we have moved up. So we are actually have one more than last month, and so holding steady, we're at 403, and now we're at 404. These are the class sizes and the students enrolled at each grade level. You can see the area now that really just stands out that was lower than expected is kindergarten, and all others are pretty much in the range of expected, maybe one or two below, and that adds up to a few from where we had initially hoped to be. But from a budgetary standpoint, we are in a better spot than what our budget shows. So that's what's happening there. Prop 39, everyone's favorite topic. And what's happening with that? We did receive our preliminary offer, which came in on February 1st. And that's a really important milestone. And the offer that we got was for our current footprint of 17 classrooms and 2 special ed spaces and 1 administrative space. That's what we officially have right now. But if you recall from last year, that was not our initial offer. Our offer last year, actually our final offer, was for 15 classroom spaces, so 2 less spaces than we've been offered this year. We got those additional 2 spaces to have our current footprint through an alt agreement, but that alt agreement did not come through until about a week before school started. We were, planning for it, and I had talked through it with everyone, and yes, this was going to happen, but it was not official until a week before school started this year. So for the last 2 years, we have successfully negotiated an alternative agreement wherein we gave up some shared space, and we, as a result, we're able to get 2 classrooms. So where does that leave us now? Well, it leaves us in a far better spot than we were a year ago, in that being offered 17 classrooms instead of 15 is a very good thing. It would allow us to essentially maintain our current status. But we also have a wish to grow, and the area I think that is most of interest to us is 5th grade going into 6th grade, of whether we'll again be able to have 2 classrooms of 6th grade, and so that would be one of the main things we would be trying to set up a alternative agreement for, is to try to get that at least 1 additional space, if not 2 additional spaces. Because the thing that we're having trouble with this year is for any kind of ancillary program, we have just no space to do it. Every time a class is out for PE, there's someone else in there, and we're running something during that time. So our space is utilized literally 100% of the time. Currently. So that's the other kind of big piece that we would like to see with an alt agreement. The bad news on alt agreements is there's nothing that requires the district to do them. We can propose them, and we can try to use the leverage of shared space, and making use of every bit of what we are offered in terms of shared space, which includes the Maria Del Rey Middle School Library and the Maria Del Rey Middle School Parent Center. We're owed 48, it's 40 or 47% of those spaces. And we also have, I think it was 15% or 16% or something like that of the gym. So we're going to look to see if we can find some time that we can have our middle school be able to use the gymnasium. But all that being said, it just puts us in a spot where it's time to continue negotiations as we've done in the past. We've actually I've made entreaties to the principal, and we have I have not heard back a final time where we can sit down and start these discussions. But I've asked him to let's talk about next year. So that's where we stand. But the good news is 17 spaces on the preliminary offer is far better than 15 spaces on the preliminary offer, which is where we were last year. So any questions about enrollment or facilities?
No question.
Okay. Then let me go ahead and move on. If you recall, last month I was able to share some really great news about being listed on a great list to be on, which is a California Distinguished School. And I need to bring you a information today about a list that we didn't want to be on, but we are. And that is called the Additional Targeted Support and Inclusion, or ATSI. This is a program in which the state, as part of the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, puts out if there's a particular area that the school should focus on. And typically this is information that's based on 2 years worth of data and a kind of a broader scope than it was this year. Unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 addendum that the state gave to the federal government, they said, oh, this year we're just going to look at 1 year's worth of data. And so in doing that, we had one subgroup of students that hit in the very high category for percentage of students with chronic absences. And that student group is our African American students, which is, this is last year's data, but it was 46 students. And 11 of those students were listed as chronic absence. And a chronic absence means that the student is absent more than 10% of the time. So in a school year, 180 days, that would be 18 days. So this is obviously that it's concerning when any student at all falls into the chronic absence list. That's concerning. That being said, last year was a fairly unique year. It was our first year back on campus full time, and we had multiple issues, as did every other school, with regard to absenteeism. And a couple of the factors that really played into this: one, we had in the earlier part of the year multiple times where we had to quarantine entire classrooms. That was only a year ago when that was happening. And so quarantining of classrooms, quarantining of individual students, parents keeping kids home, and in particular, whereas in the past, students would often be sent to school with a cough, a cold, maybe more, pretty regularly. That didn't happen so much last year, and it's not happening this year either. Families are very wary about sending kids to school when they are not well. And so as a result, we did have a larger percentage of students across our whole school. But in the very high category are African American students. So the 46 of those 46 students, 11 of them were marked as chronic absence. What that percentage equates to is 23.9% of those students. But I do want to point out that the statewide average of for chronic absenteeism with that subgroup of African American, the statewide average is 42.9%, almost double of what our percentage is. So we are not extreme in terms of being an outlier by any means. In fact, we're on the other side of being an outlier. But we did get caught up in this additional targeted support and inclusion. So what does that mean for us? It does not mean we get more money, unfortunately. It does mean that we are need to put reference to this and a plan into place. And that will be done through our LCAP. So our LCAP will have something specifically relating to this, but I wanted to be sure that the board was aware of it, and that it's definitely considered a concern. We want to improve chronic absence across the board, and we want to pay attention to this subgroup as well as other subgroups that were maybe not in the very high, but were in a high category. And that included our Latino students. It also included our low socioeconomic students who fell into that category. So there's a number of groups that we need to be keeping an eye on. And we will do that, and we will put a plan into our LCAP. And so when we approve the LCAP this coming June, that will be a part of it. So just wanted to be sure everyone is aware of ATSI, or Additional Targeted Support and Inclusion, and that this did not relate to any of our test scores. It just related to chronic absenteeism in that one subgroup, African American. Okay. All right. Last couple of things. We did have our LAUSD oversight visit. It was this last week, February 8th, 2023. The work of this is not so much the day of, although there's a lot to be done and to make sure that we show the school and have a chance to talk through and share our program on that day. But the bulk of the work is done the weeks prior, where we're putting together volumes of information that is able to be reviewed. And the areas that they review, we had 3 team members come onto campus, and they looked at school governance, they looked at academic performance, organization, the management and operations of our program, and then our fiscal operations as well are given quite a bit of scrutiny. Good news is we received positive indications from the reviewers. We haven't seen the final versions or numbers, but we did receive positive indications. And although, for instance, the known issue that we had, which was an audit finding for the 21-22 year, that does have an effect on the rating, that we will not be able to get a 4 in that rating. We did hear from the fiscal reviewer, and he said we are in a very fiscally strong situation. He looked at all of our indicators, which were in the green, saying that we have a fiscally sound program. And so his comments were assuming there was not some huge red flag that popped up that he hadn't seen yet. He is going to be pushing for the 3 on that. And so that's what we're hoping for and would expect. We do, they told us 6 weeks, but last year it took a little longer than that. So I'm going to say, let's expect a report to share with the board in April. And that will tell us how are things, and we should be getting results in all 4 of those areas. Last year, if you recall, we did not get results in academic performance because of the statewide, there were not CASP scores to look at. But this year they do have CASP scores to look at, and they were highly impressed with where our CASP scores were across the board. So that's going to help us out when it comes time for renewal of our charter. So just something that we need to keep in mind. So look forward to that in February. I'll be sharing with you, I hope, the good results that we are going to see on our oversight visit. And thank you to the administrative team who worked extremely hard to get that information out there. And thank you to our teachers and instructional aides who do every day the work that needs to happen in order for us to get a solid oversight visit. And just the final thing for our board members, that the conflict of interest filing Form 700, we do every year, is coming due. And that also, there's administrators who need to do that as well. The Form 700, you need to make financial disclosures if there's any kind of conflict of interest. In most cases, people do not have a conflict of interest, and so they simply mark it that way. This is run by the LA County Board of Supervisors, and it's all pretty automated now. We're using the same system we used last year, and I think the year before. I think this is the third time through with this system. But the deadline is a serious deadline, and that is April 1st. And you will be hearing from Christiane, and you will be hearing from Biggie if we are not completed with that. So I'd ask if you can complete that as quickly as possible, so we can be sure we're checking that off our list, because it's really important that we do have everyone filing the Form 700 conflicts of interest. And that ends our ED report. Last slide here. I just couldn't take it off from the last one. Still just thrilled about our Distinguished School Recognition for 2023. So any questions from the board?
For me, Frank.
Did you say Frank? I couldn't hear it.
Yeah, I did. Sorry.
Okay. So in regards to this chronic absentee thing, isn't it like an easy absentee thing? Isn't it an easy programmable thing into PowerSchool? So if there is a certain threshold met, that PowerSchool pops out in notice to, you know, the administrator or and saying, hey, there is something going on. There are 5 absentees and they're always on a Friday, you know, at 10 o'clock during the winter, you know, when it snows, you know, stuff like that, which is it's not the problem we're having with our underserved communities, but isn't that a simple solution for that, just to catch it early?
Yes, and that will definitely be a part of the plan we put into place to make it easier. PowerSchool does have a way of doing it, but it's not easy to find. Chronic absenteeism did not used to stand out because it's kind of a new metric that the state's using, and actually across the whole country, it's kind of the new metric to look at absenteeism as just how many days were they not here, instead of excused or unexcused and that kind of thing. So yes, because we've started it with Unified Insights, that is now available to us where it wasn't before. It is now available to us to be able to pull that information fairly quickly. But the tricky part in this, Frank, is that a big piece of this has to do with who is completing the work of independent study on days they missed. Because if you think about last year, we were sending out independent study contracts for if we had a whole class out on quarantine. The issue is who's returning those that we can get claim and who's doing the work to make sure that they're keeping up with what's happening in the class and that we can claim it for ADA. That's where there's a time lag, because you don't turn this in immediately, the work. There's a time frame in which you have to turn it in. But that's really what some of the issues are with last year. I wish I could say that this year is far better because we're out of the woods on COVID. But I can't say that because this year in the fall, it was actually worse. Not just COVID was there, but that wasn't the big issue. It was flu, and it was especially the the RSV virus that was the congestive one that just wiped people out in the fall. And so we still are facing this problem. It's not going to go away easily, but yes, we can work through your suggestion. That's exactly one of the ways in which we can improve.
So isn't it also, just as a follow-up question, isn't it like, because once you as a parent, have been in the independent study, process, it's a pretty rigorous process, right? Because when the administrators follow up, right, you are to provide their deadlines and stuff like that. Is there anything else we can do, improve on our side in order to make that, to have the kids actually do the work when they're not there, or have evidence of that?
Yeah, it's the great question and the great struggle that we deal with. We,
Okay.
even adding the independent study technician, Anita Collins, who sets up the contracts and follows up with people, and she is constantly, it's brutal trying, people just like they're not interested in what was happening 2 weeks ago. They're interested in what's happening tomorrow. And so it is very difficult, and it's just a matter of kind of nagging and pushing and constant reminders, which we'll continue to do, because it's important from a keeping students on track point of view, and it's also very important for ADA funding that comes in. It's also very important for ADA facilities, because the same numbers are used to say how many facilities we get from in-district students. So 3 different areas that are extremely important, all related to the same metric.
Catherine?
I'm interested to learn a little bit more about what the school's usual protocol is if you notice a case of a student that is absent more than you would expect. Is there some kind of outreach or conversation with the parents? How do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it is very much on a case-by-case basis. A lot of times, the teacher knows information that about a particular student, but they share that readily with our administrators. So the assistant principal, the principal are very much involved and knowledgeable about who's struggling. The difficult layer for us has been that these numbers have increased across the school, across the state, across the country, that there's just more kids caught up in this web of not being at school since the pandemic. And like you said, it's not just the pandemic that's been hitting us this year. It's kind of the triple threat of viruses that have been affecting us. So yeah, the answer is yes, we definitely do reach out, look at what are the underlying issues here. Is it a transportation issue? Is it I don't want to get up in the morning from the student issue? Is it an I don't want to get up in the morning from the parent issue? Each one is a unique, so it's definitely done on a case-by-case basis.
I was wondering if there's value, or if you could gather additional information by sort of surveying those families that were particularly impacted by student absences, to sort of have aggregate data. And has something like that been done before? Is that something that you would recommend or think would be valuable?
Well, I'm wondering if maybe we can triangulate some of our data that comes in from the Panorama surveys, and focus and tie that down to particular subgroups that are having these struggles. That might be a way to address that. I'm not sure, the same folks that are not necessarily wanting to get independent study contracts work complete and signed off are also the ones who probably aren't as inclined to complete surveys, but we can see if our numbers are enough to make some reasoned judgments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I don't have any questions. Shall we move on to the Finance Committee report?
Wait, I had some questions.
Pete, you're
Pete's
here.
here.
Go ahead, Pete.
I am
Sorry, I
here.
didn't know that. Go ahead, Pete.
That's all right. So one comment is that back to Frank's point, which I think I mentioned before, but the if a student is absent 5 or more days in the first month, that's highly predictive of problematic attendance and achievement throughout the rest of the year. So that's a super easy early warning indicator that should be in place to get the ball rolling, to identify students to monitor more closely, minimally. And I think the other comments along the lines of collecting information I think would be very useful, but I think it should be framed somewhat differently in the sense of and I know, Chris, your response was, you're thinking off the top of your head, but clearly the issue, what you want to try to find that's in common is the thing that's in common among all the students in the school who happen to be missing and who aren't completing the contracts, which likely has little to do, which is coincidental with race. And so, whether it's you're coming from single parent families or 2 working parent families, or if you're at home if you have lots of siblings that you need to take care of, if these are the actual issues that happen to be more common among a particular subgroup, then clearly those are the issues that need to be considered when developing contracts or figuring out how to either get them into the school or to complete these contracts. And so I think the data collection part is really about trying to find the commonalities among everybody of those types of things, and then figuring out what can be done to support those students with those particular, those are the 3 or 4 issues I listed are the easy ones to think about, but what are they and what can be done from our end to help support students to get these contracts completed?
Thanks.
Any other comments, Frank or Katrin?
Nope.
No comments.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve the financials for December 2022 and January 2023. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, Chris and Frank, go.
All Dr. Jones. We reviewed at the Finance Committee level.
Okay, hold on one sec. Let me get us to. Want to share financials. Okay. Sure. Okay, and am I currently sharing? Resume. Nope. Hold on one sec.
Not yet.
Sorry, I thought I was sharing there. Okay. And let's see. Has Ryan joined us yet?
I have. Hello, everyone.
Timing is everything. We're going to share a combination of information that is in the this January dashboard, but it includes also December information, and this was reviewed by the Finance Committee. Not huge changes, so it's pretty consistent with where we were when we last reviewed the financials, which was from the end of November at our last meeting. That's what we reviewed, and so I'm going to let Ryan share a little bit, and then and as I said, this was reviewed by our Finance Committee as well. So Ryan.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're looking at the January dashboard presentation, and January is a very significant month for the charter schools because January signifies the second interim month where we report these numbers to LAUSD. And these numbers will be transferred into LAUSD's template and issued later this month when the report is due. That being said, let's get into the presentation. I'm going to start with enrollment. So as far as enrollment goes, we have information through month 5, and the school had 403 students enrolled at the close of the month, and we had an average daily attendance percentage of 94.7%. This is in line with what we have been forecasting for the year. We lowered our forecast down to 94.8%. Once we saw that we had a lower enrollment number, and we lowered down our ADA. But this is still not quite our 96% that we were hoping for when we originally set this budget. And it's not, we're not out of the woods yet, as Dr. Jones said, as far as attendance goes. There are still some challenges from COVID-19 that impact our school. Moving on to the income statement portion, as Dr. Jones said, there really isn't much of a variance from the last report to this one. We have about a $2,000 revenue difference from what we reported at the last board meeting till now. And just as a recap, our local control funding formula, we're under budget by about $207,000. That's directly tied to our lower enrollment and lower ADA for the year because of the lower enrollment. And the reason why it's only lower by $207K is because some of that was offset by higher rates from LCFF for this school year than we originally budgeted for. On the federal revenue side, we are lower in our special education funding, which is also tied to average daily attendance. So that's what's driving the majority of that 32K for federal revenue. And on the state side, where we see the biggest positive variance, this has to do with an influx of one-time funds. And we do have that broken down in our notes and also in the key points up above. But just to remind us all, this 468K is primarily composed of our hold harmless revenue from the previous school year that we were able to realize this school year of 290K. Then we also have some one-time funds, the largest portion being the Learning Recovery Block Grant, which was new funding that was made available after the start of the fiscal year. And we're accessing about 140K of that in this budget for the 22-23 school year. Also, we have an Arts and Music Block Grant, which we are utilizing about 35K for this fiscal year. So that's what composes that big $468,000 variance to the positive. Other local is comprised primarily of higher special education rates through our AB 602 portion of special education. So we get two buckets. One is federal, IDEA is what it's called. And those rates were lower and they were impacted by our lower ADA. But the AB 602 portion of special education actually was a higher rate for this fiscal year than budgeted. And even though we have lower ADA, we're forecasting higher revenue in that category. And that's just a recap. Again, from the last meeting to this meeting, it's about a $2,000 variance. On the expense side, we also have some small variances. Total expenses are about $13,000 better forecasted for year end than the last meeting. And the big change there is actual savings realized from employee health benefits. Each month that goes by, we are realizing and experiencing savings in our actual benefits compared to what we originally budgeted for. As a recap, the big variances for the year for the big variances for expenses for the year are in our operating expenditures, and that big expense has to do with our estimated over allocation penalty and rent for this fiscal year 22-23. So we do have amount that we have plugged in anticipation of another over allocation penalty, and that was present in our last presentation as well. Overall, we're looking at net income for the year of $306,000 after you total up all of the positive and over expensed items for the year. On the balance sheet side, we're looking at year-end cash of 1.7 million. And the reason why it dropped from our January 31st balance of 2.2 to 1.7 at year end is because we're anticipating a larger accrual at year end of about $867,000. And that's because although we have an influx of one-time funds that weren't budgeted for, the timing of those funds and the timing of all of our funds for the most part are later than we would like. And we are anticipating a larger year-end accrual balance, which we hope will be a very conservative stance where we will see the accrual lower by year-end and our cash balance increase by year-end. But as of right now, we're forecasting a $1.7 million cash balance at the end of the year. Within this packet, we also have our notes, which summarize what I've discussed today. We also have the actual income statement and balance sheet. And the last 2 pages are the check registers for the months of December and January. And again, these were reviewed in detail at the Finance Committee meeting, but they're made available to the board in case board members have any questions on any of the disbursements for the months of December and January. And that concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Ryan.
If I can point out,
Chris, anything else to add?
yeah, if I can point out that the check register is broken down into 2 months worth, the 1st of December, and all of these are for the month. It's done in order, the largest amount to the smallest amount, and then in January you can see the same thing. I do like to make sure that these have a chance to be viewed by the board, but it also, as I said, we go over this line by line, including the credit card statement, where we also go over line by line in the Finance Committee.
Questions, comments? Frank?
No questions, no comments.
Pete? Catherine?
No questions.
All right, then all in favor to approve the financials for December and January 2022, 2023. Frank?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
And that's a yes for me. Moving on. I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2 days per diem rate for ED for winter campsite administrator. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Sure. This relates to the winter camp that we did, which was not in the original plans of the year. We added a 4-day camp that occurred January 3rd, January 4th, January 5th, and January 6th. We set this up through ARC, and we reported about this before, but we did need to have an administrator on site. And so we broke it up into Big E covered January 4th and January 5th, and I covered January 3rd and January 6th. So I got the opening day and the closing day. These were non-work days for us, and so I approved Big E's 2 days that she had, but as I can't approve it for myself, I am bringing it to the board for approval of the 2 days that I worked in January for the winter camp. And those were full days that we were there on site with the camp, which runs as a 9-hour day.
Thank you, Chris. Questions, comments from the group? Frank, Katrin, Pete?
You wonder why this hits the board level, and the simple answer is because I couldn't approve it, because I don't have any, authority. Only rests with the board collectively. This was an, unscheduled payroll, so I did not sign off on it after consulting with Sam, and so subsequently it is in front of you to sign off, but I highly endorse, that Dr. Jones is getting paid for what he has done. So
Thank you, Frank. I should have next time just like give him some pizza, and let's call it even. All right. All in favor, Frank?
yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
That's a yes for me. Chris, you can go get a slice. Like to make a motion to ratify the agreement with Speech Improvement Center for on-campus speech services. Is there
I second it.
go ahead, Chris?
This is listed as a ratification, and the reason I moved forward with this because we needed it immediately. We have been searching for on-campus speech services all year long and have been unable to find them. We made do with online speech services, which is at best problematic and at worst a disaster. Maybe keeping kids connected in speech services online is a very difficult thing to do. So there was a new group that we became aware of called the Speech Improvement Center, and they have their own center, but they are reaching out to some schools and kind of building their program and providing speech services on school sites. And so we kind of jumped on it. And so we've already gotten them up and running. So far, so good. We're excited to see speech services back on our site and happening. We've got catch up to do, so they're here quite a bit in the last couple weeks. And so I just wanted to be sure that the board was aware of a new agreement and ask that the board ratify that agreement. I already did sign it.
All right. Frank, Katrin, Pete, any questions?
No.
No.
Nope.
All in favor, Frank?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Katrin?
Yes.
Ratification, or the item has been ratified. Moving on, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2022-2023 LCAP federal addendum. Is there a second?
I can second. This is Katrin.
Thank you, Katrin. All right, Chris.
Okay. Let me go ahead and pull that up. So the board is familiar with the LCAP, a local control and accountability plan that is a part of the funding that we get for LCFF, local control funding formula. When we applied for federal funds in the last couple of years, the most important of which has been the Title I funding, we have to do an addendum to our LCAP. And this document that we have here, which is about a 26-page document, I think, it is that addendum. Now, some of the things that are required. This is the format that is required on this. And some of the things do not apply to us as a charter school, and other things do not apply to us because we didn't ask for that funding. So the funding you can see over here on the right, Title I Part A, Title I Part D, Title II Part A, Title III Part A, Title IV Part A. The ones that we are applying for as a school are right here, or have applied for as a school: Title I Part A, Title II Part A, and Title IV Part A. Those are the three that we have as that we apply for, the federal funds that we do. And so this LCAP addendum reflects what it is we do with that money. And it takes a mid-year look at were there any changes or anything else that was a part of it. So this format, we won't go through all pages of it, but this is developed in combination with A+ Charter Consulting, Anjanette Urdanvinia, who we've worked with for several years on our LCAP. She also does this now in addition, and works with us on this, and we meet with her several times and go over this. Ryan is also involved in how we're tracking all this funding coming in from the federal government on this. So it's a long and involved document, but it does meet the requirements that to have Title I, Title II, and Title IV funding. And so ask the board to approve this document. The next thing you'll be seeing from us on the LCAP will be when we are in budget process, and in June, we'll be approving the LCAP itself for next year. Okay, any questions?
Frank, Pete, Catherine?
Delegating my questions to Pete if he has ones, because I don't.
I do not.
I don't have any either.
Moving on to the vote, all in favor? Frank,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
That is a yes for me as well. On to the discussion regarding format for board meetings, reverting to original Brown Act rules.
Okay, this is a discussion for our board to talk about how do we revert back to the rules that we used to live under, and what has changed in the world since we have started doing our meetings virtually through Zoom. And is there potentially a legal way to do kind of a hybrid of where we're still running a Zoom meeting, but we're also following the Brown Act? And so I think there's a number of issues that some things that were brought up at our last meeting. Certainly the question of you know, how would we run the meetings physically at school now that what's driving this, I'm sorry, is the statewide emergency from the governor is being withdrawn at the end of this month. So in March, we would need to revert back to the original Brown Act rules. One thing I want to point out that under the original Brown Act rules, it is possible to join a meeting virtually. And the thing that is important to note is, in order to count for quorum under the Brown Act original rules, that a person joining the meeting virtually needs to be physically within the local area, and that local area has been defined for us as the county of Los Angeles. So we're not tied to just the LA city or LA Unified boundary, but it is the County of Los Angeles, where if you join virtually, you can count for a quorum as well as participate. If you're outside that jurisdiction of the LA County, you may participate in the meeting, but you cannot count for quorum. So that has an implication for us as well. I think the being able to join the meeting virtually as a board member, one thing that is required is that the place that you are joining from, it needs to have there needs to be public notice. So the agenda has to be posted at that place at the appropriate time. And typically for us, that's 72 hours. So in the Friday when we make, if we have a Monday meeting, it's Friday night. So that needs to be publicly posted, and a member of the public must be able to join at that site and be able to speak at that site if they chose to. In practicality, that's probably doesn't happen very often because we would be also have the school available for people, which is far more convenient. But according to the Brown Act, that would be a requirement. So I'm going to open this up, Yasir, or if you want to open it up to discussion, and see how we want to push forward with meetings.
Thanks, Chris. Well, I think we need to have legal meetings. So I think we knew that this would be a temporary Band-Aid for COVID. So yeah, I mean, I don't see a problem as long as we have quorum at the facilities in the location there. Frank?
Well, I will likely post the majority
You
of
might have
my
lost
meeting.
Frank. Pete, comment?
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
there he is.
Oh, sorry. I will likely post the majority of my meetings, from but participate virtually rather than come into school, and because I don't get the 2 hours of commute back, So I'll post. I'm in LA County. I'm actually in LA City proper, so for me it's not an issue. So likely going to be virtual for the majority of the meetings. Unless, we serve cookies and cream and stuff like that. Just joking.
Cookies and cream. Chris, you know rock cookies and cream, right? Did you? No, I don't think
It's
so.
Bratwurst and pretzels.
Sauerkraut. Und Bratwurst
Sauerkraut. There we go.
Yeah, okay.
No beer. Pete?
Well, for the foreseeable future, I would need to attend virtually because I'm still at school because I have class until exactly 6 o'clock. So unless that transporter beam is available, it would be impossible. But I can do it from a lecture hall and people could come sit and watch.
Perfect.
Is there any
Catherine?
problem with posting for you, Pete?
No.
Catherine?
I'm in the same boat as Frank. I would likely take the majority of meetings from our house as well, which is in the city of LA. I don't have an issue posting. It's just, again, the commute time really adding up. And it is a lot more convenient that way, and it allows me to attend.
All right. That sounds like consensus. Chris, anything else to add? I think you've got the board feedback.
Yeah, I think Samantha, who lives very close to the school, I believe she would likely be coming to the school, and we would set up a a situation where I think everyone would still have their computer and we'd set up a Zoom just like we're doing now. We'd be able to record it just like we do now. And we'd select a room, but a classroom, it might be the L room, or it might be one or another classroom. But
wait, Chris, why would we, maybe we should have this conversation again with Sam, because it sounds like logistically you guys have to do a lot of stuff just so she could be there.
no,
Otherwise, would you do it remotely? Like, would the
no, I
staff do
think
it remotely?
I think we have to have
Got it. A meeting
it
place.
on the site. So we would set it up as that the public can come to the school and it's posted at the school, and anyone from the public could come. The public can also come by Zoom. So I mean, it's sort of a it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I do think we will have to have a physical presence on campus. So regardless of whether any board member was there in person, is probably how we would set it up. So I don't know, because she's not here today. But I think that was her plan. She lives close by and was going to come to campus. So either way, we would be able to work that out.
Sounds good. All right. If there's nothing further, don't see. Let's move on to new business, next steps, and follow-up meeting times. Catherine, I'm so glad you're here. Does anyone have any thoughts on meeting times or changes to existing meeting times? Frank, you good with what we got?
This is predictable and doable for me. Like it. No changes, please.
You're also German, Frank, so I'm just
Cha. Cha.
Pete,
This is about as good as it gets.
Catherine,
I suppose I would prefer shorter meetings. So sort of between 6 and 8, that's pretty long. And it's for me sort of in the rush hour of family duties every day. And that has made it quite difficult for me to reliably attend the meeting. So I've had conversations with both Chris and you, Yasir, that I would personally prefer perhaps more condensed meetings, and perhaps earlier during the day, perhaps during a lunch break. And I mean, I'll try to continue this as it seems to work for everybody but for me. And I fully understand that all of our schedules are a touch different. But yeah, this time of day and also 2 hours, it's quite difficult.
I do agree that is, so why don't we, at the next board meeting, make a concerted effort to, like, perhaps find a better time? If the board members would agree, like, we can just do an exercise. It could be during the day, and who knows, it might, lead us to some greener pastures. But I do encourage everyone to chime in, because obviously this is a time commitment. So thank you, Catherine. I appreciate you saying that. On that note, I don't think we have anything further, unless board members have anything to add to follow-up meeting times and new business. All right. At this time, the board will adjourn to closed session, and we will discuss the matter described in section 8.